Our other audience question from Facebook that we're going to pull for today's show, Nicholas Cotter. Thank you for joining the Facebook group at Sports Card Strategy. You can get the quick link at sportscardstrategy.com. And Toa has said in this chat that he's joining, so we can't wait to see him there. I'm going to accept his request right after this show airs. But Nick asked a basic question around, he'd like to have some insights as to why he's seeing Herbert rookies go for more than Burrow rookies, especially in Optic and Prism. He says, am I wrong and am I missing something? And card prices change every day. So I want to get your guys' take on this. But in these two guys' case, related to Prism and Optic base. Now, I will say at nooffseason.com, our focus is not on these base cards. Our focus is on much more investable cards than these. Now, not that you can't make money on these cards, you definitely can, but I just think there's a smaller margin for error on these cards. I think that like in order to really make money on like flipping these base PSA 10s, for example, of Optic and Prism, you have to like really time the market to buy low and then sell high right away, because basically they have a price and they're going to always kind of be that price. But when I look at the difference between Burrow and Herbert, I actually see Burrow is slightly outselling Herbert for both Optic and Prism based PSA 10. So I don't know. Maybe I'm getting something wrong. Maybe I'm not sure where Nick's looking and where I'm looking. But what do you guys see when it's related to Burrow and Herbert? And I guess what would be your take on, those two guys against each other? Let's start with our guest co-host Chase Crim on the comparing the two quarterbacks' value.
That's interesting. You say that the base Optic and Prism, is that what you said?
Yeah,
Burrow is more than Herbert because, well, I tried to look at contenders rookie autos on Card Ladder Market Movers, but they weren't on there.
We know they don't exist.
Burrow isn't whatever. But I looked at it on alt, and Herbert contenders autos are outselling Joe Burrow's by like $2,000, and that's crazy to me. It's kind of upsetting because I have a huge Joe Burrow card, and it doesn't make sense to me. I have a theory, and it kind of explains why the autos of Herbert are more than the base, or like the autos of Herbert outsell Burrows, but the Burrows base outsell Herbert's. And I think so when all their football cards came out, right? Herbert was like the guy to get because Burrow had just torn every ligament in his knee. So I think Herbert has had more time to reach like the peak. So there's more people buying Herbert like all the way up, and so there's going to be more people kind of guarding his prices. Like there's a lot more people in Herbert because they could get in earlier, or they wanted to get in earlier because they're like, okay, this is clearly the guy. And so I think that's why his high-end stuff is outselling Burrow's, just because there's more people's had more time to buy his stuff. Now I was buying Burrow's high-end stuff after he destroyed his knee, but I'm definitely in the minority on that. And so I think but you see Burrow's had more success, and I think that's why his base stuff's higher, because his base stuff has more like impact like on actual like ability. Like he just went to the Super Bowl, his stuff's going to be higher in theory, right? I think that's right for the base stuff. I think for the high end stuff, there's a number of different reasons. Like people bought in high on Herbert at the beginning, and I think that's why his high end stuff is more expensive, if that makes sense. I could be completely wrong on that. That's just kind of a theory that I have.
Yeah, it's all based around a an element of where you could buy into these players. You know, when you think about it, Crim, you're I think right on. And when I look at this, I think about my world of investing in other assets. And when you talk about floor price or initial price where you could get into something, Burrow's floor price where his investors or his most committed fans, like for you, for instance, were getting in, they were getting it at a much different price level than they were at a Burrow. I mean, at a Herbert. And so, like, we've just mentioned the market cycle of emotions 20 seconds ago. And Paul, I don't know if you want to Google that, but there's an awesome graphic just so if you Google market cycle of emotions, and it's basically off of like real world investing, but it totally applies to sports card investing. But you see like this hoop and then a hoop and a holler, like, and then I think with Burrow, you're still seeing those same increasing increments, but they just started from so much of a different place than they did, almost exponentially different than Herbert. And I think when it's all said and done, Burrow probably will be the better quarterback and have better stats. I'm willing to go ahead and say that. Last year on a podcast, I called him the new Tom Brady. Like I think he's got that sort of mentality. But I know that's saying a lot, by the way. And I'm still willing to stand behind that. But I also would say I think geography plays into this a little bit. If you look into where these players are from and you look at their average index of fans, the LA is a strange franchise right now. And I don't know if there's that many committed LA fans in general, but if there are LA committed fans, they're probably in the immediate area, which means I don't know if you know anything about the cost analysis difference of living in Cincinnati, Ohio, rather than LA. But I'm just looking at those average indexes of what that fan base makes on an average basis. The average cost of living for an LA fan is much different than a Cincinnati fan. And I think even the memorabilia does play a little bit into that. Because and I don't know how far that goes, but when I look at other sports as well, you see that as well. You see Dodgers cards are just astronomically different than Cincinnati Reds cards, even if their stuff is the same, and so that thought is not fully fleshed out, but I would wonder if the average income of the consumer or of the geographic area of the franchise plays into this at all.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with both of you guys. I mean, Crim kind of talking about the hype cycle, really never wearing off for Herbert. Like there was not a catastrophic injury. And there was for Burrow. I mean, Burrow's just been up and down, right? So Kendall, when you talk about the cycle of market emotions, there's pessimism, skepticism, optimism. That's when you start to see the behavioral buy. Then it gets to euphoria. And so I feel like there's been more pessimism and skepticism for Burrow than there has at all for Herbert, which I think would explain like what Chase is saying about the higher end Herbert buy being so much different than the higher end Burrow buy, meaning like Herbert outselling Burrow. I also think that's where, Kendall, your point about the market size plays in. I also will add that the optimism for Herbert coming into this season, talking to guys like Andy Kaysen from Football Card Quest, who many of you know from the Sports Card Strategy Show and the Football Card Strategy Show. Andy's talked a lot about Herbert and in regards to the moves that the Chargers made in the offseason to bring in, I think, guys like Khalil Mack. They appear to be kind of trying to do what the Rams did last year, but do their own version of that with more of a youth movement. So I think there's a lot of people following the NFL close like Andy does, thinking, okay, Burrow was last year and who's going to be this year? And I think when you combine that with like the hype that Chase spoke about Herbert coming in at and really not ever going down from that, continuing to play well throughout, both of his first two NFL seasons and being a high draft pick and an amazing athlete. He's 1 year younger than Burrow. I don't know if that makes a huge difference, but I think maybe the team that he's on and what his team is projected to do next year, this upcoming year rather, versus what Burrow's already done. I think that a lot of savvy investors are looking at that. And then I think it does make sense, like what you guys are saying on the lower end cards, like the base optic and Prism PSA 10s. We consider them lower end cards at nooffseason.com, even though they're about $200-$300 right now. That's still lower end cards from what we're looking at. And so, it would make sense that I think like somebody with a lower income would invest more in a lower end card for somebody like a Burrow, and somebody who's investing in Herbert maybe wouldn't really want to touch a lower end card, because if they're going to really profit off of Herbert, they're giving themselves more of a chance. Like if you think about it this way, if you invest in a Herbert Contenders rookie ticket auto, or even like a serial numbered version of that, Herbert won't have to do much for that card to go up because it's already a high end card. Herbert will just have to have like a streak of really impressive games. The Chargers will just have to start 6-0. He won't have to win a Super Bowl for that card to go up. If he does win a Super Bowl, the card's going to go through the roof. Whereas Burrow, I think now will have to go out, will have to come out of the AFC and get into another Super Bowl for his card to go up. I'm not sure how you guys feel about that, but I just think that also plays into it.
That's a good point. Kind of like what they've done versus what they can do. Like a lot of people are probably betting that Burrow isn't going to make it back to the Super Bowl. Now, my counter argument to that is that, yeah, the Chargers have added a lot of pieces, but so has every team in their division.
Yeah.
And granted,
that's true.
I'm going into this very biased. Like I'm going to bet that like Burrow's my dude. I'm not paying more for Herbert than a Burrow. I'm just letting you know up front. But like,
yeah,
the Bengals just went to the Super Bowl. Their division it's them and the Ravens. The Steelers might be decent, but I mean, who knows? And then the Browns.
Put some respect on my name,
I'm sorry,
son.
Kendall, but like, is it gonna be Watson? Like, who knows what Watson's like? Who knows what that's gonna be like? Who's your quarterback situation? And the AFC West is just going to be a gauntlet week after week after week. And like, I'm good. Like, I'll just sit on my Burrows. I do have a question for y'all. If this is asking for a friend, if y'all had a National Treasures Joe Burrow RPA and a BGS 9.5, what would y'all do with that card?
Cross it over.
I mean, I'm not gonna cross over that card just because I don't want to lose value on getting a 9. But
yeah.
But
so
do I
answer that.
Sell? Do I hold that card? Like that card's massive.
I'll answer that question, and I'll also kind of weave in my conclusion to the topic at the same time. So I think that would I spend more on Joe Burrow than Justin Herbert? And I think this goes into me answering your question also, Chase. So if it depends, one thing I don't think we've talked about in this answer is it does depend on your window, right? Like, are you going to look at when are you going to want to sell the card that you're buying, or in your case, the card that you already have? And I think this is where Burrow having already gone to a Super Bowl actually comes into play, because I think we see quarterbacks now being talked about in the mainstream media, not just how many Super Bowls they've won, but part of the conversation is always, and they've been to X amount, right? So going to a Super Bowl now all of a sudden in recent history, like is an accomplishment. But like, I don't think it ever really was when I was growing up, but I think now it is. I think like now being in the Super Bowl is like a really big deal. And so I kind of think of it like, in hindsight, say 10 years from now, how many Super Bowls will Burrow have gone to and how many will Herbert have gone to? And Burrow's already up one. And to your point, it's going to be super hard for Herbert to even get to one. So I would say I would rather have Burrow is my answer, because there's no guarantee what either of these guys do in the future. Now to answer your question, I would definitely hold it at least until – so I look at things like I like to kind of be liquid within 6 to 12 months, usually after I buy something. That's usually my buying. Usually my buying strategy is to flip it, profit, and move on into something else, right? And so I'm going to assume that that's kind of where you're at too. So if I were holding this big, massive Burrow card that you're talking about right now, I would actually be super excited to hold it every single week of this NFL season for as long as I possibly could. I'd be nervous as hell that he's going to get injured every week because the card is so massive. But even if he does get injured, the backup plan is always to just hold it for another year and then he'll come back, which is not a bad backup plan. So I would probably either sell on the hype of this upcoming NFL season because the Bengals are going to be hype.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm leaning towards right now. But
yeah, that's probably what I would be leaning towards as well.
When did
that's
you
probably
get it?
What I'd be leaning.
So I got it in the off season last year.
Oh.
And I traded it at like the trade in value I got it in was 10,000.
Oh,
and it was raw. And
you're going to be sitting pretty no matter what you do.
And then I was when I traded for it, I wasn't even thinking about getting it graded. And then so I had it raw and I was just sitting on it. And then January came around and it was like, dude, they're going to be in the playoffs. And I was like, dude, they got the Raiders in the first round. And then they played the Chiefs in the conference finals, right? Who did they play in the second round? It was the Raiders. I forgot who they played in the second round, but it was the Raiders and a super beatable team.
They beat the Titans. They beat the
Titans. And I was like, dude, I can see them easily beating the Raiders and Titans. And I was like, once I saw that, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to send it in to Beckett because, like, whatever it gets, like, I think they're going to make it to the AFC Championship.
Yeah.
Because they had somewhat of an easy path compared to what the Chiefs had
to
go through.
So why didn't you sell it when they went to the Super Bowl?
So I got it back from grading literally like the Sunday before the Super Bowl. And so at that point, I was just like, all right, like I just got this. I might as well just wait and see what happens. And at that point, I was hinging after beating the Chiefs, I was hinging my bets that they were going to win. So that's the main reason why I didn't sell it then. But also
because you were going to wait until after the Super Bowl.
Like, how do you sell? I don't know how to sell that card in the span of a week.
Why? Have you ever thought about like sending it to something like Pristine?
Sending it to who?
Pristine.
I'm not too familiar with Pristine, but like Golden and all that stuff.
That's what. Sorry, I meant Golden.
Like the turnaround window, like they're not getting that up on their site and sold in a week. Does that make sense?
No, I mean now. Like
now? Well, that's the thing. Now so right now I'm going through my LLC process of getting an LLC set up. So I've sent all that paperwork in. I'm waiting for that to get that back basically for this one card because I want to make sure everything's good tax wise and the IRS doesn't come in chasing me like, dude, you have $150,000 in your bank account. Where did this come from? So I'm waiting for that to come in, and then I'm probably gonna sell on preseason hype, just because I don't want to risk losing what I have. Does that make sense? Like that's my biggest card by a lot, and it was something I kind of just lucked into, and so like I'm not hinging my bets anymore on it. I'm just gonna take what I got.
Yeah.
And put it into something else.
I think it's smart, dude. I think it's smart. Yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah,
what a massive card, by the way. Golly.
Yeah. Well done, man. I think you're smart to be thinking. I'm super grateful that you dropped that question to us on the show because I think it's actually really valuable for the audience to hear this. Like, I think even if your card's not as massive as the one that Chase is talking about, I think that like a lot of you probably have cards like this. And just, I think there's certain pockets of time where hype is key to being able to move out of something. And you have to remember these guys get the NFL. Like, I mean, if you've ever played fantasy football, just think of how frustrating it is when your guys go down all the time. And so, Anani one is out here talking about the knee injury being a concern, dropping I mean, I agree with everything Anani one is saying here in the live comments. And so it seems like we're all kind of on the same page. Now, yeah, Kendall, I'm glad that you asked Chase what he got into that card for. But if you're profiting that much, regardless, I would sell on a hype cycle like the beginning of the season, and then
that's
just,
like a good point, especially in today's economy. Like, I'm willing, like, that's why budgeting is like a huge thing for if you're trying to buy and sell cards. Like I'm willing to sit and bet more on a card that's only like 5% of my budget. You know, does that make sense? As opposed to something that is like, okay, that's life changing. Like, I don't want to risk losing any of that.
So let me ask you this before we
today. But
so let me ask you this before we move on to the next topic. I want to hit RPO's question. But before we do that, how do you think you are going to sell this card? Like, is this something that you're going to sell on your eBay account? Is this something you're going to try to use an auction house for?
So I think we're going to just set it out at the National just to see what happens. Like, if someone comes up.
Yeah.
But I think our end goal is selling it on PWCC. And the monthly premiere option is what because I'm into it with my brother, which he got a really good deal because we were half on. So I traded the Donovan Mitchell and Mbappe, I think, card for the raw Burrow, and we split those two cards. And I'm the one that worked the trade out. My brother wasn't even involved in it, and so now my brother has half of this card with no work. Just like half of those two cards put in.
Yeah, but
so
he got you this job with no work.
True. So I should be thankful, right?
No, that's sick,
it's nice how things always work out. You know, everything.
So when are we going to go halfway on a card that blows up?
Whenever. I'm down.